All right, as we move on to our next panel, I'll just recap, as you just heard Mr. Batia speak about the collaboratives being used to address emerging technologies and working together on standardization initiatives of mutual interest. One of those that he mentioned was collaborative on additive manufacturing, and who better to help further explain the extent to which DoD uses additive manufacturing when obtaining sustainment parts and providing rapid equipment to the warfighter on the battlefield than our next guests. Mr. Greg Kilchenstein is currently the Director of Enterprise Maintenance Technology in the Office of the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Material Readiness. In this capacity, he is responsible for developing the policy and implementing programs that promote technology enablers which focus on sustaining material readiness at best cost. Specifically, Greg leads the CBM Plus Action Group, the Commercial Technologies for Maintenance Activities Program, the Joint Technology Exchange Program, and the Additive Manufacturing for Maintenance Operations Working Group. Following Greg will be Ms. Kelly Visconti, who currently supports the U.S. DoD Manufacturing Technologies Office and facilitates the Joint Additive Manufacturing Working Group, JAMWIG, across DoD collaboration focused on addressing common barriers to the use of additive manufacturing in support of our nation's defense. Kelly previously served for 6 years in the Advanced Manufacturing Office at U.S. Department of Energy as a technology manager and was the program manager for 2 multi-year public-private partnerships focused on research and development to save energy and increase U.S. manufacturing competitiveness. Without further ado, Mr. Kilchenstein.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I'm going to share my desktop at this point. So if you have my slides up right now. So I'm Greg Kilchenstein. That was a great introduction. I appreciate that. Just to start off by saying a big thanks to Greg and to Robin and the DSPO team for this opportunity and this invite. I'm going to call a little bit of an audible since Kelly is going to focus on additive manufacturing standards. I'm going to focus on another standard that's promoting and helping us scale innovation across the sustainment enterprise, namely condition-based maintenance plus standards. If you look at the graphic on the left side of this initial slide, you'll notice that this is our graphic for CBM Plus. You'll notice that in the core of CBM Plus is reliability-centered maintenance and condition-based maintenance. Again, both standards-based processes that we use extensively in commercial industry and across the DoD. The next band out from the core is what I like to call the primary capabilities of CBM Plus, right? This whole business of being able to capture data, transmit that data, store, analyze, implement change, and then track and improve what we've done across the board are the key primary capabilities of condition-based maintenance plus. And then on the outside here, these are the enablers for condition-based maintenance plus capabilities, whether they're items or serialized item management or item unique identification. These are all things that we use to exercise CBM plus across the Department of Defense. Next slide, please. Okay, so now let's talk about, let's start off in the stratosphere here. So in 2018, the National Defense Strategy called for us to do a couple different things. One, it asked for us to build a more lethal force. The second thing it asked us to do is to invest in game-changing technologies and capabilities. The third thing it asked us to do was to change the way fundamentally that we do business, to become ever more efficient and ever more effective in the way that we do it. If you're following along with the DoD right now, you'll know that that we're in what we call a little bit of a readiness bathtub. We have readiness levels that are much below targets and optimum targets for many weapon systems across the board. And so globally, we're not just going to be able to what we call buy our way out of this readiness bathtubs by buying new systems. For example, the F-18 recently had some readiness issues that were well advertised, right? And we weren't just going to go out and buy a bunch of new F-18s to take care of that readiness deficit that we had. So we're also not going to get a whole lot more money for parts and repairs of those weapon systems either. So we really have to come up with a sustainable way to provide material readiness sustainment across the board. And that really comes down to the innovation piece of what it is that we're doing. So readiness and sustainability go hand in hand. As we need to drive our weapon system readiness improvements through these innovative channels. And you're going to hear about two of them today. One is condition-based maintenance plus, and then Kelly's going to talk about additive manufacturing in a couple of different veins. But we look from a sustainment perspective, we look at ourselves as the customer closest to the additive manufacturing door. So they're the two key initiatives that we've got going on within the Department of Defense to really change and transform the way that we do sustainment. But the one takeaway from this particular slide is I want you to take away from this thing is that sustainment and material readiness go hand in hand. And when the Secretary of Defense talks about lethality, he's really talking about having those weapon systems that are available to perform the missions in the right place at the right time to get those done. So they need to be ready at all times. Next slide, please. So CBM Plus, let's neck down a little bit into what CBM Plus really is. And at the end of the day, what CBM Plus really is it's using data, the data that we have in all different shapes and sizes and forms across our department, to migrate from a reactive and a time-based maintenance enterprise to a proactive and predictive maintenance enterprise. At the end of the day, that's exactly what it is. So what we need to do is we need to develop a deep understanding of the material condition of each and every weapon system that we own and operate. This $500 billion worth of stuff that we call, our material within the Department of Defense. And really, we're working hard to change, unscheduled maintenance to scheduled maintenance across the board. So if we can see a failure mode coming at us, we can schedule the maintenance and have the people, the processes, and the parts that are available when we're ready to conduct that maintenance on that weapon system. And that's the heart of what we're trying to get at with CBM Plus. The objectives really are to create insight about the material condition of our weapon systems at all levels. It's in the first slide I showed you that CBM Plus at its core is RCM based, reliability centered maintenance. Reliability centered maintenance is also governed by standards, and one is the SAE, or there's actually a couple, but the SAE JA 1011 and 1012 are two standards that we rely heavily on in the core of what we're trying to do to enact CBM Plus across the Department of Defense. The outcomes that we seek, really affordable combat power, right? Sustainable sustainment is a great way to think about how to do this. We just can't throw bags of money at sustainment anymore. We're just out of Schlitz that way. So we need to come up with better ways to do that. And CBM Plus is right in the core of what it is that we're trying to do. On the right-hand side, we call this the racetrack slide. It's really that core piece, or what I called in the first slide around is the primary capabilities, right? We need capabilities to effectively and efficiently capture data in a standard format or standard fashion across the department. We need to transmit data on board, off board, into the enterprise in a standard fashion across the department. We need to be able to store that data in a way that's accessible and usable by folks across the department, and even sharing that with industry in both ways, with industry sharing that data with us. We need some standard ways to analyze that information and convert all that data into insight across the board. So really what we're looking at across the board here is the need for standards across the board to really scale what we're trying to do with CBM Plus again, at the Department of Defense level. We're doing really well in certain pockets within DoD. The trick now is for us, right? Our next move is to take these instances of what right looks like for CBM Plus then and scale that across the Department of Defense, across these large enterprises within the Department of Defense. Slide, please. So let's talk about CBM Plus standards. The only way that we're going to get CBM Plus implemented at scale is through standardization and doing things in a common way across our department and across the boundaries between DoD and industry and academia across the board. So the overarching challenges that we really have, right, is that the data really comes in all shapes and sizes, and it's been with us for a long, long time. And the flow of data across that sustainment ecosystem is nonlinear, and it covers all the different life cycle functions, whether you're a weapon system designer, whether you're a weapon system acquirer or a weapon system sustainer. All the data is important in terms of what goes into the CBM Plus machine. Proprietary data is really the bane of our existence right now in terms of how we're trying to share this information widely across the DoD. Again, those pockets of folks that have been doing prognostics and health management and CBM Plus well for some time now have been really leveraging a lot of proprietary capabilities and proprietary data structures. So we really need to move through that in a way as we try to scale up CBM Plus in a way that connects that data. And then, you know, capabilities like artificial intelligence and machine learning requires us to establish standards for the data, the safety, the accuracy, the usability, interoperability. All those things are needed for us to advance CBM Plus across the board. You see that there's these different kinds of standards that we need, right? We'll need standards for data ownership models, right? We have a lot of, again, this proprietary information out there. So we need to be able to standardize how we deal with data ownership across the board. That really is probably, if we talk to the practitioners, that seems to be the #1 obstacle right now, is the data ownership models really need to be standardized in a way that we can use data from across the life cycle for these weapon systems that we've owned for a long time and we're going to own for a long time coming. Data connectivity, quality, and interoperability are all really important in terms of connecting all the life cycle data to make decisions about what we do, to condition base, maintain our weapon systems across the board. We're dealing with both on-asset data acquisition and exchange and off-asset data acquisition and exchange. So there's a lot of things that we need to figure out in those areas as well. And then open system technology solutions and best practices across the board all need to be standardized. So what I'm showing you here is that for us to scale CBM Plus across the board, we have some really, really big challenges that we need to address. And the data standards piece of this is a journey for us. We've been working on it now for about 12 years, and we'll continue to work on it for the next 12 years as we go. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done at this point to get where we're going. So I think we need a better strategy going forward, and we need some better solutions in terms of which standards that we put into place and what priority order. So it sounds like we're working on a data standards roadmap. So if you move to the next slide, please. Talk a little bit about the strategy of how we're going to get there at this point. So we've established a data standards working IPT that we've chartered under my CBM Plus working group at this point. We've got DoD service participants. We will soon be reaching out for industry participants when the time is right for those things. And then we need to make sure that we fully man this particular working IPT with all the cross-functional domain subject matter technical experts across the board, so that we can actually take care of the entire life cycle with the standards that are required. Our purpose really at the end of the day here is to accelerate, innovation and CBM Plus execution across the board. How we're going to do that is by starting off with identifying those critical gaps. We studied CBM Plus implementation and execution standards a couple of years ago. We identified many, many gaps. As we've work to scale CBM Plus, I think we're going to find a lot of other gaps as well. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go look at those gaps across the board in standards. We're going to look through, you know, what is industry using, IEEE standards, ASTM standards, SAE standards, ANSI across the board. What standards are we using in the public sector and the private sector across the board, so that we can identify those key gaps. And then what we need to do is we need to work very closely with the SDO organizations and with the folks in the DoD who continue to develop standards where those gaps exist, and work to bring those things together to collaborate better across the board. So again, the approach, you know, the three-step approach: adopt existing standards where available and they fill gaps. The second piece is to quickly and rapidly develop MIL-PERF type specifications and standards that address critical near-term gaps, and then to work collaboratively across the board and better across the board with the SDOs and other government standardization organizations to fill those gaps and ensure that we are communicating and collaborating widely across this prognostics and health management space and the CBM Plus space. Next slide, please. It's my get off the stage slide at this point. So CBM Plus is a collaborative, right? It's everybody working together to really transform the way that we sustain weapon systems using the digital environment, using all the data that we have at our disposal. We need to accelerate what we've been doing. We've been at it for about a dozen years. We're making progress, but we need to go faster. And standards are a key to that piece of us going faster. We believe that the kinds of standards we're talking about for CBM Plus align with the DSPO's DSPO's mission. And in order for us, I think, to work more collaboratively, I think the real ask is that we're asking the DSPO to work with us through our working IPT for standards. So when we get to a place where we've identified standards and gaps for those standards, that we can work with the DSPO to get to the standards organizations and other areas, so that we can develop the standards that are required for us to go better and faster in this area of CBM Plus. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kelly. And Kelly's going to take us through additive manufacturing, and then we'll open it up for some questions.